Good morning, everyone. Here I am on my morning walk. I'm in Piazza San Marco. There's a stage there where they have a summer concert series. In fact, Andrea Bocelli played last weekend, and there's many other artists here continuing this, and this is my view. Bell Tower. This is where I live. This is right around the corner from my house. So it's early, and I'm walking to my local gym, which I'll show you. It's much different than what we have in the States. And I wanted to share many of you have been asking why I moved to Italy and the purpose and why did I make such a change. Previously I was in Las Vegas for the last 10 years. But I think, and other people, many of you have asked, what's my story? How did I get into the business? How did I become a chef? And what's my history? So I know you've all seen my videos on cooking, and that some of you know me, and many of you don't. So I thought I would start with, before I share why I moved to Italy, is to tell you a little bit about my history and why I became a chef. So let's do it. I'll break this up into a few segments here so we can get through it. Otherwise, it would be a pretty long story. But look at this. Let me show you this. That's the Doge's Palace. That's the Basilica. Here's the watchtower clock. Anyhow, so it's nice because not too many tourists out right now. It's a gorgeous day. There's a nice breeze coming off the water. And so I was born in New York and Long Island. My parents were from the Bronx and Queens. And my whole family, everyone, aunts, uncles, everyone emigrated down to Florida when I was about 5 years old in 1974, 1975. And my parents, separated and divorced, and I grew up with my mom, and I have two beautiful sisters. And my parents are both passed, and a few years back. So at 13 years old, I wanted to do more. I wanted to earn money. I wanted to, get a pair of Nikes. Back then, they first came out. We lived near the beach. I wanted a surfboard, and I wanted things that other kids had that I didn't. So I went to work at 13 years old and started my apprenticeship. Take a look at this. It's a beautiful morning view, isn't it? So I went to a restaurant, Nanny Lee's Strawberry Mansion, right here. It was on Melbourne Beach on the Causeway, right off of A1A. And the chef there, Pete Wynkoop, had gone to the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America. And I told him I was 16 years old. And I got a job as a pot washer, and it was not glorious. I was washing pots and pans and dishes, cleaning floors, and eventually they allowed me to peel onions, peel garlic, and wash bushels of spinach, because back then the bushels of spinach were never cleaned. They came in packed with mud and dirt, so you had to wash them about 5 times. Here's the bridge of size, by the way. So I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I felt like in the kitchen it was a great community. We were like pirates, and I felt like I belonged. And I was hooked. I was hooked in being in the kitchen. And then I started to learn how to cook. Then I worked my way up to cook. After people quit, I worked my way up because I showed the chef that I had aspirations to do more, and he took me under his wing. It was a great experience. And then from there we moved to, I was about 10th grade, we moved to New Jersey, my mom, my sisters. My mom got a job there. And I cooked in restaurants through high school. It was always my passion. After high school, I put myself through the Culinary Institute of America. I went there, loved every moment of it. And I graduated in 1989. And then I went down to New Orleans and worked at a place called Commander's Palace with the Brennan family, where Emeril Lagasse was the chef back then. And I call that his pre-BAM days, because that was before he was really famous, but he was certainly making a name for himself in New Orleans. And it was intense, it was hard, it was rough. It was really, really difficult for me, because you had to go in, it was cutthroat, and you had to go in. I'd go in early, and you had to grab your tools, your pots and pans, and utensils and spoons and ladles, and you had to hide them. It was a tough kitchen, and we did a lot of numbers. I remember over 800 covers, and we had to cook everything to order. And we were in the weeds every day for prep. There was never enough time, so I'd go in hours before just to be ready. And it took some time, but I earned my place there, and it was a wonderful experience. New Orleans was such a great place. I love the food and the people and the spirit of that town. And then thereafter, I went to Cape Cod and Boston and worked at some great restaurants there. Another chef, Danny Wiesel, who comments on my posts a lot, was a mentor to me. It was in the early 90s, 1991, 92. And back then, everything, it was hot. Eclectic food and mixing Italian and Thai and Hispanic and Mexican food. It was the menus were all over the place, and there was people really producing great food. It was a wonderful sense of innovation and discovery in American cuisine. But I knew that there was more to it. There was much more to it than, I got to take a detour. There's a tour group here. So much more to, I was young, and I was of Italian heritage. My whole family was Italian. I grew up with wonderful holiday dinners with my parents and my grandparents and aunts and uncles. And I remember dinners would start at 1 o'clock, or lunches would start, and they'd go through dinner and we'd eat, and it was wonderful. Great experiences, beautiful memories. And I knew, back then I looked and I saw Gualtiero Marchesi in Italy and Paul Bocuse, and I knew that the best chefs focused on one cuisine, and that was their own. That was their heritage. So I wanted to learn more about Italian cuisine, Italian food and culture, and I knew that it was much more than chicken parmesan and what we saw, and spaghetti meatballs. So I saved up. I worked as a sous chef there, and then I got a job at a bar, watching the door on my days off, saving money. I lived in a little studio in Boston in the North End. It's a lovely part of town. It's the Italian section of the neighborhood. And I saved up $5,000. And then in 1993, I flew to Italy. And one-way ticket. And it was the first time I was on an international flight. It was snowing in JFK, and they were de-icing the wings. I'd never experienced that. And I was terrified because it was a big plane. So anyhow, the flight was very turbulent, insanely turbulent. And I remember back then you could smoke on a flight, even though I smoked occasionally, but on that flight, I bummed a couple cigarettes from people, and I was standing in the aisle smoking because I thought I was going to die. I thought the plane was going down. And anyhow, so anyway, I made it to Italy. I worked in Rome. I went to a place in Rome on Via Vitelleschi, right overlooking the Vatican. It was the Hotel L'Intestar. The restaurant was called L'Etoile. I believe it's still there. I know the hotel is. But the kitchen was overlooking the Vatican and all of Rome. Very high on the floor, all glass windows. It was wonderful. And I'll tell you about my experience. So the first day I worked, they said, "You ready to work?" I spoke no Italian. It was terrible. I tried to speak. I didn't prepare learning the language. And they took me to, after work, they took me to the dishwashers who were Albanian. Back then it was when Albanian, the communist regime broke up, and there was a lot of Albanians that left Albania to seek work and opportunity elsewhere. So there was many Albanians in Italy at that time. So these nice Albanian men who were the warewashers took me to our flat where we were going to live. I was living with them. It was massive. It was on the second or third floor. We get in, and there's no electricity. And they showed me my room, which was a massive, giant, I don't know how big the room, it had to be, I don't know, 800 square feet, 900 square feet. It was big. In the middle of the room was a cot and a little table. Just, that's it, nothing more. The floor was very dusty and dirty. Again, no electricity. And then I found my way to the bathroom. And then I discovered that the bathroom, it was just a tub with a spigot. So I couldn't take a shower, I had to sit. But here's the other thing, there was no hot water. And it was March, and it was still cold in Rome. So I got home and I took some little buckets that food came in, little containers, and I filled them up with water and washed myself. And I bought soap and I washed my clothes in the sink. There was no washer and dryer. I hung them out the windows and on wherever I could. And then, nice ice cold shaving. But it was despite all that, it was a wonderful experience. So I stayed there and I worked, but it was my first entry into Italy. And then from there, I went up to Perugia and I traveled up alone, my backpack and my knives. That's all I have, just me, my backpack and my knives. And I had Faith Heller-Willinger's Eating in Italy guide. That was my main guide to eat, because back then there was no internet. And a friend of mine told me to go to Italy because I love wine, and they knew I was interested in wine. Back then I didn't know a whole lot about it. And I met a man named Carlo Petrini, who founded Slow Food. And those of you that are in the industry or know of him, he passed away last month. And he was the founder and president. And he befriended me and took me all around Italy. We traveled, we went to the south of France. I worked in their restaurants in Piemonte and Bra and Alba. It was such an amazing experience, and it opened so many doors for me. Then I'm here at my gym. No, it's not jail. I know there's bars in the window. And then from there I went to work. I went to Venice to work at Alcovo with Cesare Benelli. And I'm going to stop this here. Tomorrow I'll continue from Venice, Alcovo, my experiences traveling and working through Italy. And I did what was called, let me make this clear, what was called staging. I worked for free, no pay. So I went to restaurants, knocked on doors. I would eat at them and taste the food alone. I was always alone. And then I would ask them if I could work in exchange for room and board. But it's quite an adventure and quite a story. So I'll continue it with you tomorrow, because I'm here and I have to start the rest of my day, and I wanted to break this up in a few digestible segments for you. So I'll continue on tomorrow from starting in Venice and Alcovo and the rest of my journey staging in Italy. Thanks. Love to you all.